Yesterday, the Premier stood there and bragged that our government would, quote, never download costs onto Alberta families during these difficult economic times, and yet we see them racking up debt and taxes at an unprecedented rate.
Agreed.
The government is incapable of making difficult decisions that Alberta families are making every day, and is downloading the cost of their fiscal incompetence onto the next generation.
That's right.
Who will ultimately have to clean up this mess.
No question.
To the Finance Minister, do you not realize that by avoiding tough financial decisions now, you're sacrificing the prosperity of our children and grandchildren?
Good question.
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, another member of that party gave me a piece of paper that said Alberta was the lowest debt to GDP of any province in the country. The lowest debt to GDP. So we are taking the actions that we were voted in on May 2015, which is to protect services, to protect programs, to invest in this province, and to diversify the economy.
Up to what the Minister had said, I will say, you're welcome, Minister. Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Premier also bragged that Alberta has a $7 billion tax advantage over other Canadian jurisdictions. 2 years ago, that advantage was $11 billion.
Right.
She also inherited a $1.1 billion surplus, a $6.5 billion fund, and a AAA credit rating. Now we got a AA credit rating, an empty contingency fund, and a $10.8 billion deficit in one this year alone.
That's right.
And for the first time in decades, Alberta's borrowing for operations. To the Minister, when will you restore Alberta's $11 billion tax advantage?
Good question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. You know what we also inherited from the other side? We inherited the inability to balance a budget. If you look back at the number of times when oil was at $105 a barrel, they couldn't balance the budget. It's at 45, and we're doing a good job.
High price or low, we never went in the soup $11 billion in a year, and you're headed way higher. Mr. Speaker, yesterday I also asked the Premier when Albertans could expect to see a reasonable plan to pay off the mountain of debt her government is accumulating. Instead, she talked about bringing the budget into balance, refusing to give a timeline. Albertans know, and government should, that a plan to repay debt is not the same as a plan to balance the budget.
Right.
Again, to the Finance Minister, who ought to know, I'll ask again, when will your government present a realistic debt repayment plan?
Good question.
Good question.
Minister of Finance.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. You know, I delivered Q2 yesterday, and in Q2 we saw that a more positive economy is coming in 2017, 2.3% growth in 2017. We also saw that the deficit is smaller at this point. So, Mr. Speaker, with regard to the challenges, I want to let you know that the Saskatchewan minister is in the same position we are. He says you don't want to shock your economy by firing literally hundreds of teachers and nurses and put hundreds of people out of work. So we're keeping everything stable in this province. That's what Albertans expect.